Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butz, get big or get out.
You know, it's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be. And realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. We've been making cheese in Wisconsin since before we were even a state, which may be one reason why we win so many awards for it. It's what happens when a whole state dreams in cheese. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
Welcome to the Grape Nation, your weekly wine journey. Our guest is Pepe Raventos. We'll talk to Pepe about Paneres, sparkling wine, Raventos y Blanc, and more. We'll taste a couple of Pepe's wines during the podcast for our weekly wine sip. I'm your host, Sam Ben-Ruby. Stay with us for the Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. We bring wine to the people. Pepe Raventos' family has been around for a long time, like since the 1400s. Pepe is a 21st generation winemaker at Raventos y Blanc in Spain. His family led the development of Paneres into one of the world's leading sparkling wine regions in Conca del Rio Anoia. Pepe traveled to Burgundy, the Loire, Germany, and the U.S. to hone his craft before settling into the family winery. Pepe Raventos creates pure wines that speak from their origin, making wines with minimal intervention and a focus on minerality. Welcome to the Grape Nation, Pepe.
Thank you very much, Sam. This is the most generous introduction I ever heard.
There you go. So we're off to a good start. All right, so we're talking to Pepe remotely today via our remote app, Zencastr. Pepe, where are you right now?
I am sitting in our winery in Sant Sadurní d'Anoia, our hometown village located about 40 miles west of Barcelona.
Okay, so for people to visualize where you're sitting, just, people see a map of Spain, just to set it up with even more detail, exactly where the winery, the Catalonian region, where you are. Go into just a teeny bit more detail.
See, so this, first of all, this is Paneres Valley. Paneres is a valley that is very historical in winemaking. First winemaking history comes about 4,000 years ago here in the valley. And as you know, the wine was created, or it's meant to be created in Georgia and then traveled all around the Mediterranean shores. So this valley, Paneres, close to the Mediterranean, like I said, 40 miles west of Barcelona, is between two mountain ranges. The mountain range of Garraf that isolates us from too high humidity that would be critical for the health of the crop, and then a second mountain range, which is the Prelitoral, very important for Catalonia because especially this agriculture Catalonia protects us from the north winds. People may know the Montserrat mountain range in the middle of Catalonia that I can see across the window, which is an amazing mountain range, center of energy of Catalonia, protects us all here, the Catalans, incredible 2,000-year-old monastery, etc. Is that enough concrete?
That is good. So now we know kind of what's going on in the region you are. And we're going to talk about that a lot more too. But another thing, and, I don't do this with everyone, but I think it's critical to who you guys are. Yours and your family's story is so long and rich. So, during this podcast, I want to talk about the past, the present, and the future of Raventos y Blanc. Can you start, with a brief history of the winery? I want you to do three things, and I'll lead you along the way. A brief history of the winery. I want to talk a little about your personal journey, where you kind of started and when and came back. And then, kind of the future. So if you can, I know we date back to the 1400s. If you could take me from there to present.
Absolutely. I don't know if it's very rich, but definitely extremely long.
Pepe, it's rich.
Boring. I hope it's not boring. But yes, we have documents here of ancient Catalan about first inventories that were in that farm in 1497. Where they state already the animals we had in the farm, the olive trees and the olive oil we produced, the surface of vineyards and the wine we made and such, no. And then long story short, we are of course a typical Catalan farming organism where animal, man and plant coexist and live together in a very sustainable way, I must say. No?
Pepe, before people were putting labels on it, you were doing it, right?
Exactly. This is the idea, no? And it was the traditional way to live, if you want to say survive, depending on how hard the times were. And then what really changed Spain was that because of the discovery of the Americas, we sent a lot of wine to the new continent, and Spain became the biggest vineyard of the world. Still today, as you know, Spain is the biggest vineyard in absolute terms in hectares planted or acres planted of any country in the world. No, the other thing is that how our wines have been reputed, but because we haven't been able, or we haven't been as knowledgeable as our neighbors, the French or the Italians, to do such great marketing. But the wine quality is amazing, and of course the know-how and the hectares are there. Anyhow, going back to Penedès, I think it's critical in the 1800s. We start to switch from fortify the wines, which was a way to protect the wine from its travel overseas, meaning add alcohol to the juice. So making kind of something that today maybe we would not call wine, but it was definitely a product that would come from the vineyards, no, from the grapes. So we would switch from that to start to make serious whites, and more important, in 1872, Josep Raventos Fatxó, here in the farm where I am talking to you, made the first Spanish champagne. He was aware that there was a region north of France called La Champagne that became very successful with that second fermentation in the bottle method, traveled to the region in several occasions, learned the method, and brought it to the Catalan territory, to Spain. And this was his vision was like really the keystone moment of what we share today. No?
Didn't that take a lot of forward thinking and a lot of balls?
Exactly.
I mean, that's like a big deal.
That's a big deal. And more important is because he didn't bring Chardonnay or Pinot Noir to the region.
Right.
He brought the know-how of the method. He got inspiration, but he didn't copy, because he did the first Spanish champagne with the grape Xarel·lo, which is a grape I would like to share with you today that doesn't have the recognition yet, but I think it's in the top of the pyramids of the white grapes in the world.
So Pepe, so everyone knows, Xarel·lo is Xarelo, one L?
Yeah, it's two L's
Two
with
L's,
a dot in the middle. It's some Catalan weird thing that complicates the equation.
When we talk about Xarel·lo, I just want, my listeners to know, because if they go to Google it or whatever and they do a Z or whatever. All right, so continue. I'm sorry.
No, thank you. Absolutely. Xarel·lo is critical. And let me tell why, in our opinion, it's the top of the white grapes pyramids. You have to take into account we are in the Mediterranean shores where winemaking started and viticulture started. And I'd like to remind that this is the natural climate for winemaking. If we look at a vine as a plant, it naturally belongs to this climate and this type of soils, and the history backs this up. No, meaning that the biggest challenge of a vintner is humidity. Humidity that pushes all the fungi, etc., and you run out of crop. So in all the world, even in organic, you are allowed to treat with copper and sulfur the vineyards to protect from fungi. So here we are in the natural climate for winemaking, right? Then we have this grape called Xarel·lo, which is indigenous from here. And this is very important to understand this moment right now. It's that the grape fully ripens at 12.5, 13 alcohol, but with a pH of 3.0. You may say, Pepe, this is a little bit boring. But this is very important to understand, because this equilibrium in ripening in the field is an equilibrium that equivalates to Burgundy, which is 700 kilometers north of us, or to Champagne, which is 1,000 kilometers north of us. But we are in the Mediterranean climate. So, and this is only Xarel·lo that does it. It's like a miracle. It's like a miracle.
So a couple things. You go back to 1872, the foresight to go to Champagne, come back and bring sparkling wine, but you really don't create an appellation or an awareness of all this till much later, correct?
Exactly. It is until Josep Raventos Fatjó son Manuel Raventos Domènech who develops the trilogy Xarel·lo Macabeu Parellada. And I think it's interesting for the listeners to understand that, probably you know already, but we work with different grapes in any region of wine in the world to be protected from weather risks. Say, if you have a late frost in April, it may affect one of the grapes but one of the varieties that did already the bud break, but not the other ones. If you have hail in late May or beginning of June, it may affect only one of the crop that is in flowering, but you save the other ones. And the same in the harvest time. If you have to harvest all the surface in 1 week, is very different than if you have 3 or 4 weeks to harvest all the surface. You can work much more precision and make much better wine. So this is why Xarel·lo Parellada Macabeu is created, like in Bordeaux, it's Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot and such. Then the marketing complicated people have and journalists have say, oh no, this is because adds more fruit and this one adds more acidity. That's good, but this is not the real thing. The real thing is agriculture.
Right.
Then sorry for that aspect, but then this is how the Champenoise method starts to be very strong here. And really the growth starts in the first half of the 20th century, Sam. Why? Because every time there is World War, Champagne region is blocked by the Nazi invasion. And then when the Americans want to celebrate, they ask, well, we want there is no champagne available, so there is the best alternative, or maybe the only alternative at that time, is what the Raventos family was making here in the Penedès, and this was the beginning of the growth. No, in the 1970, after the wars are finished and everything, no, the Champagne people say, listen, because at that time Spanish champagne was called Champagne in Catalan with an X, Champagne, Xampany.
Wow. I didn't
And
know that.
people from Champagne said, listen, if the sparkling wine comes not from the Champagne region, you cannot call it Champagne or any similar name, which I think was a very important thing and well done for Champagne. And this was what pushed my grandfather, Josep Maria Raventos Blanc, to create Cava appellation and Cava name.
Which, that progresses into another thing, which we're going to talk about. I want to go backwards for a second, because along with the family history, your kind of travel journey line, because you moved around a little until, for a few decades now, you've planted yourself there. Tell me some of the things you did. I mentioned in the intro you traveled. You hooked up with prominent winemakers from the Loire, Champagne, Burgundy. Tell me about the influences of these people and, who they were. And also, weren't you in New York? I mean, just tell me a little about, how your line kind of coincided with the Raventos y Blanc line.
Let me try. So basically, my background and passion is social work. I was working in social work, but at that time, my father was not having a very good time, and the winery was having a lot of troubles. We're talking about the beginning of the 90s. So, my uncle convinced my father, say, Pepe is somebody that can really help you. So I joined my father and started to work in distribution to kind of like save the winery from these difficult moments. And I fell in love with wine easily, like most of us, because it's one of the most beautiful passions in the world, something to share almost on a daily basis with people you love and with connection to the nature. Anyhow, so I decided I wanted to study enology. I studied enology, and I also did the Master Sommelier here in Barcelona for 2 years, which I think was even more important than enology because it opened my view to the world of wine. And because of that, I started to travel to our neighbor country, which I think still today is the leading terroir-oriented winemaking country in the world. So, I went to different regions, learned a lot in Burgundy with the Lamy family, with Olivier at Hubert Lamy in Saint-Aubin, because I wasn't known enough to be accepted in Merceau or Pouligny-Montrachet, right? Then I went to Champagne and spent time with growers like Sophie and Pierre at Domaine L'Armandie-Vernier, or with Nicolas Chiquet and his brother at Gaston Chiquet. Domaine Paul Barras. I also became a good pal with Anselme Selos, with whom we exchange wines every year,
Sure.
and even until today. No.
Did you mention Dagenot?
And then also I was about to mention that I was very fortunate to go to Domaine Didier Dagenot in 2004 harvest internship. And that was, I always mention, it was my most critical influence in all those experiences and internships. I was fortunate to live with Benjamin Dagenot and work aside him under the instructions of the father. To be honest with you, at that time they were fighting a lot. I still remember Benjamin at the end of the day so tired of the character of his father, saying, "I want to start by myself." And imagine 3 years later, as you know, Didier passed away from this sad accident, and Benjamin took over, and he's doing an amazing job. No? But the concept of terroir, I would say, to be true honest, is all around France, where I got the influence. And definitely with a concrete aspect of Dagenot and Silex wine, that was the epiphany, if I may say.
Right. So the influences, you took little things from each, person and winery along the journey, and made, I guess, some subtle and some major changes. Is that fair to say?
Well, when I came back, I took over the technical responsibility and started a new path where really the protagonist of our sparkling wines would not be so much the method, which of course is important, and you have to be very detailed in every aspect of it, but really bring the protagonism into the agricultural part. No? Understand our soils, understand our climate, understand the importance of working with indigenous grapes, and this. No, so I think this was like really definitely the change that Raventos started from 2005 and on.
So, it's amazing how, since I've been doing the show, the talk from wines and winemaking, to the focus on farming, has become, really the important part of what you do. I mean, it's evident to me that your vineyards and how you farm them, along with the minerality of the wines is critical to your success. So that's where you did make that shift to geology and terroir. Talk to me about, you made a commitment to biodynamic farming. You talked about why the region is perfect for making sparkling wine, the climate. Tell me a little about, the biosphere you've created, the commitment to biodynamics.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, if we go back to farming, I think to fully understand the potential of quality of our sparkling wines, you really have to understand Xarel·lo, as I said before, its aging capability. I forgot to say that this level of balance gives us an amazing aging capability, because 3.0 pH is the strength of the acids. It's like the backbone of any wine, and also is a white grape that concentrates a lot of resveratrol. Resveratrol is the antioxidative of the grapes.
Right.
So this is critical, that Xarel·lo is the white grape that concentrates more resveratrol analyzed per unit in the world. So this gives that grape an amazing capability of aging. But aging is method, so it's only one aspect. If we go to biodynamics, of course, I will share with you some that today, I think, like 20 years later, that biodynamics is a little overrated. I think it's an important ingredient, but I am a little tired of my wine is good because it's biodynamic. For us,
you see it more as a lifestyle than a definition, right?
Exactly. We are Demeter certified. We do all the preparations, etc. But for me, the keystone has been to come and live in the farm and really develop this lifestyle of working again in this piece of land, in this humble little part of the world, with animals and plants in a sustainable and closed ecosystem. No? This is the essence of biodynamics. This is the essence of biofarming of ecology in a way. Eh? And you know how I call it lately? I call it the recuperation of the farm organism, because the only thing we're doing is to recuperate what our ancestors were doing in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s and such, before the era of confusion. I call the era of confusion. Right. When we started to spray and fertilizers and productivity and grit and etc. And it's beautiful to find that really going back to basics, to really, I say in wine, the future is the past. This is making sense for our grapes to taste better, to taste more pure, to taste more honest from the place. Our wines be more of interest of people in the world, have important people like you paying attention to a humble winery like us today. And I think this is very beautiful.
So you talked about Xarel·lo. You talked about the climate. You talked about ageability, Xarel·lo. A couple other things. The actual soil, I mean, the climate is perfect for that. Isn't the soil, kind of perfect, with the limestone and everything? I mean, doesn't that help you make these great wines? And one of the things you didn't mention, and I need, I'm asking you because I don't know, is you didn't mention acidity, which at the right levels is a great thing for these type of wines.
Yeah, thank you. So when I talk about pH, it's a way to talk about acidity. Basically, the pH measures the strength of the acidity. So it's even a more complete description. So the lower the pH, the higher the acidity. So when I say that Xarel·lo has balance of Burgundy in the Mediterranean latitude, this is what I really mean. That it has an amazing acidity for being in a warm, dry place. But to be in a warm and dry place makes us able to make grape with minimal spraying. And this is the critical aspect of success in the farming in this area.
And talking about Champagne is the opposite, right?
Champagne has much more rainfall, right. So the pressure is
more treatment.
Although nowadays, with a climate crisis and pressure, everything is changing so much that for what I read recently, Champagne is having acidity issues and too much alcohol because the sun is very strong up there. So it's really critical. While here we have these plants so adapted to the sun and to the dry and to these poor soils, that for now, knock on wood, we are resisting this climate crisis.
So two things I want to taste and talk about. One of the sparklers, because we're talking about that. But before we get into that, I mean, I know you've endured some very dry and warm weather in the region. I'm wondering, because you brought up, climate change. Is this a cyclical thing? Like, it comes, it goes through the years, the decades, or are we inevitably, seeing this climate change and, you have to understand and make the preparations for it?
I am just a simple farmer and nobody to talk about with authority about what's happening. But from my humble point of view, it's a critical climate crisis we are living through. We are melting. We are melting all our ice in the world. Right. The temperature is rising, and we are really in a very, very complicated situation.
But you said you're a humble farmer. Day to day, as a humble farmer, are the effects becoming unpredictable more than anything? So
unpredictable. 2020, not only we had COVID, but we had historical rainfall that we haven't had like 1940s.
The last 5 years have been crazy, to say.
Crazy. Unpredictability would be the word.
That's fair. And, I would love to check back with you 3-5 years from now to see, if things are starting to, really happen on a regular basis. Pepe, in front of me, I have a bottle that you and the distributor kindly sent me, the Raventos y Blanc Viticultors de 1497 from your region, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, Conca del Rio Anoia. It is the specific bottling is the Textures de Pedra, Blanc de Negres.
Yes.
Viña Més Alta. So tell me, a little about this wine, and then let's taste it together.
What vintage are you tasting?
I have 19.
Okay, fantastic. So, Texturas de Pedra means stone texture in Catalan. And Viña Més Alta is the highest vineyard. This is a vinification of Xarel·lo and Sumoll. Sumoll is the red indigenous grape. That's why it's a Blanc de Negres in Catalan, that stands for a Blanc de Noirs.
Right.
Because the proportion of Sumoll is much more significant than Xarel·lo. But what I think we should...
Wait, so what's the percentage?
It really varies because it's a vineyard selection, and it's not a recipe. But I would say...
On the 19?
19 would say 2/3 of Sumoll, 1/3 of Xarel·lo.
Okay. All right, continue.
I think this leads us to talk about Pedra, stone, and answer your previous question, Sam, that I did not about minerality. I think to fully understand the potential of the sparkling wines of our region, you really have to understand the minerality concept. I say to the journalists, and some people laugh at me, if you like fruity, enjoy champagne. However, if you are into the mineral white wines, give a chance to the wines of Conca del Rio Anoia. Because when I came back from Dagenau, I spent a few years working with the University of Barcelona of Geology to fully understand the landscape where we work. And to simplify, we learned that this is an ocean valley. So we are making wine in a territory that was covered by the Mediterranean Ocean for 3 million years, 20 million years ago. And when the ocean went back to the actual shore, all that life that was tropical years, high temperatures, shallow seas, etc., was fossilized, carbonatized in the soil. So the mother rock of our vineyards is a fossilized limestone. It's a limestone, plenty of shells and snails, and still you find like actual diatomeas and actual nacre, 18 million years old, which is it's beautiful. And when you come, I'm happy to share with you. There are a few places here in the region, and one affloramento, one like surface affloramento of fossils here in the property. So
I've seen pictures, chunks of limestone with gobs of fossils in them.
It's important to share with our listeners that are interested in this idea to visit the website. They can navigate on that. But it's really important to understand that the combination of that Xarel·lo in that fossilized limestone enables us to make sparkling wines, of course, with aging capability, but more important, with an incredible mineral/salinity profile.
All right, so let's taste and talk. So visually, I have the wine in front of me. You said it's a Negres, almost 2/3 this vintage of Sumal. The color is kind of a light golden, light medium. There's no really pink or red to it. It's got beautiful, delicate bubbles. Do you agree with me on the color on this
Should
particular
be like light copper, if my
Yes.
description makes sense.
Yeah, subtle light copper. And then typically the bubbles on cavas would you say similar to champagne, less, more, bigger, smaller bubbles?
Okay,
Varies?
if I may jump on that, I
Go
would
ahead.
say
That may
the
be a
method-
silly question.
The method is exactly the same.
Right.
Sadly, my region, the Penedès region, wanted to take a shortcut and go to volume. And Cava has become a cheap alternative to champagne. But from the quality standpoint, the method is exactly the same. And for the reason that we took the shortcut, I was living in New York at that time, and you taught me in America, Pepe, don't hate the players, change the game. So that's
Right.
what we did. We decided to declassify from Cava, that was created by my grandfather. I repeat myself, but it's kind of controversial. And the same family that created Cava decided to leave the appellation, the first in 2012, and work to create a new appellation. Of course, this is Spain, and we're talking about government, so things go very slow. So 10 years later, we're still negotiating with the Generalitat de Catalunya, Catalan government, but I foresee that, and at least I will keep fighting to create this appellation, because it's an incredible opportunity to really propose the world an alternative to champagne. Not better, not worse, just different.
Okay. I think you've succeeded in doing that. In finishing up with the Tectores de Pedra, tell me a couple things, if you can, from recollection, because I'm not sure if you have it in front of you. The Pedra, typically on the nose, are there characteristics that you could remember? Because I know on the palate.
Yes, absolutely. Texturas de Pedra would be our balance of this idea of minerality sensation that already you can perceive in the nose, like earth and a certain not fruity component, but that you already
Right.
It's telling you that the dry and the saline, something is going to come that is not on the fruit. And then also because it's 4 years aging on the lees, you can start to feel certain notes of autolysis when we find that certain smokiness, dry, toasty nuts, a little bit of very, very ripe fruit, dry ripe fruit. Sorry that my English is getting so rusty. I need to come back to New York, don't I?
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's also very elegant. All those things come through. So this is a 2019. Does that mean every year there's a vintage bottling?
Yes. Every bottle that we make in Raventos y Blanc, since we left the appellation and we committed to create this new appellation, is vintage dated. We believe that the protagonist is then the nature. I think the most important element when we talk about farming is understanding soils from a geological perspective to an edaphologic perspective. That's the first horizon, the clay, the humus, the organic materia, the life that is in the earth. That's the most important. But second is the climatology. So how are we not going to talk about weather and about what happened in one year? So that's why we commit to vintage date every single of our bottles.
So the 2019, is that what's on the market now, or there are later vintages? How does that work as far as release?
This is the current release of Texturas de Pedra. That is because it's a single vineyard. It's highly allocated around the world, and we're very happy to have faithful customers that get one case or two cases, and they like to keep it during the year.
Yeah, it really is, wonderful, and it's a treat to taste. Two things. We have to take a break in a few seconds, but before we go, I want to talk to you about vine age. I mean, with all the vast, hectares that you have, what kind of vine age is running through, all the properties? Like, is this particular Tectores, are these older vines, or it's a mixture?
To be honest with you, Texturas is a middle age. We're talking about 35-year-old
Okay.
vines of Xarel·lo Sumoy on the top vineyard. This is a plantation that my father did. The farm is not that big. We're talking about 65 hectares planted, but this is a living farm. So by this I mean that we also have like parcels that we took the vines away, and we have crops growing to regenerate the soil fertility and also produce food for the animals, and also push for the biodiversity of the state, such as the olive groves that we have. But we have parcels that we keep like individual muscle selection replantation, so we keep the age to the limit, talking about 100-year-old vines in Clos del Serral vineyard, our most emblematic north face slope, to plantations that we planted last winter, so they are only 1 year old.
Right. Pepe, we have to take a quick break. We are talking to Pepe Raventos. Pepe is the proprietor of Raventos y Blanc. When we come back, we're going to talk about a few more things, leaving the appellation, his newer project, Consumai. And Pepe, I also want you towards the end of the show to talk about Futuro Vinador. So you're listening to The Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. There's a reason when you think of Wisconsin, you think cheese. Cheese is a huge part of Wisconsin's history and future. In Wisconsin, the state of cheese, the tradition of cheese-making excellence began 180 years ago, before Wisconsin was recognized as a state. Immigrants traveled to settle in this lush green hills of Wisconsin, bringing their cheese-making traditions with them. These storied skills, combined with the freshest milk available, created a cheese-making culture that is uniquely Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 1,200 cheesemakers, many of whom are third and fourth generation, continue to pass on old world traditions while adopting modern innovations in cheese-making craftsmanship. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
All right, we're back. We're back with my guest, Pepe Raventos. Pepe.
Hello.
Thank you again. It was a treat to taste the Tectores de Pedra. In a few minutes, we're going to talk and taste the Consumai. I want to back up a little and spend a little more time on something that you brought up. It's hard not to talk about Raventos y Blanc with, what you brought up. And that was, and I don't think you mentioned the year, but you said, almost 10 years ago, without discussing 2012, when you left the Cava appellation. As you mentioned way earlier in the show, Spain is the largest, region for vineyards. And, by your region, a lot of that is sparkling wine. And you were instrumental in creating the appellation Cava that you left, which is kind of funny in a way. So get into a little more detail. Why you just said, hey, you know what? Screw this. This isn't working for us. This isn't what we want to do. We're out of here. And explain more what Conca del
Yes. Conca del Rio Anoia. Sorry for the name, right?
If it's not in front of me, I don't remember it.
It's the geographical name that stands for Valley of the River Anoia. Conca, valley in Catalan, on a rounded shape, on a shell shape. Rio for river, and Anoia is the topographic name here of the region, Anoia. No? So, and the name that the river receives.
And that is your appellation now.
Exactly. So this is the appellation that we decided to take in 2012, and that we're still on the working process to have the official approbation of the Catalan government, because the requisites are very strict, such as, for example, the kilo of grapes is 3 times what is paid in the region. Such as the vintage date every bottle is organic and biodynamic certified, is even a longer aging on the list than champagne. But really, I think
can I just ask you a question? You require and demand more for the grapes, you said, right? 3 times.
Yeah.
Does that pass along, let's say, to the workers? I mean, is that one of the reasons to be equitable, to everyone that's involved in the process?
Absolutely. I think through the years, I moved from, of course, there is a legacy here in the family that gives us a lot of passion and know-how and attention to detail and to make things well. No? But from this, we moved to work well in all the details. But really, I think what is moving my work lately, and I think it's the true meaning of pushing for a new appellation on the quality, is we're talking about an ecological commitment, bio commitment. We're talking about a social commitment, and we're talking about a cultural commitment. No, and let me explain this. The bio commitment is very simple. If we don't pay well the farmers that source grapes to the sparkling producers in the area, because to understand Penedès, you have to understand that because of its historical poor region, there are still a lot of independent farmers that have amazing old vines of Xarel·lo or Sumoy, that if you pay them €2 per kilo, they are the happiest people in the world. Why? Because this is still a poor area with a limited prestige in the world and in Spain. So this is true viticulture. There is no real estate like in fancy wine areas of the world. So like the best hectare here it costs 50K. If you go to a fancy region, and I won't say the name, but it costs more than 1 million. So this is why I think one thing is real estate and the other is true viticulture. So €2 a kilo. And this is the essence. Say to the people, the disaster of Cava is that we pay 50 cents a kilo of grape. And this has destroyed the region from an ecological perspective, from a social perspective, and from a cultural perspective. Why? Because from a biological perspective, with 50 cents, we don't produce quality grapes, and we have to spray and do everything because if not, and there is not a way to produce grape, mechanize, etc., move away from hand harvest, etc. Social commitment. Well, if you don't pay well the grapes of the farmers, the families that in the area don't live well. That's we can complicate the equation as much as you want, but this is the essence. The essence is, and the cultural commitment is critical, because if there is no quality grapes and quality agriculture, if the people in the farming don't get refurbished for their effort, people abandon, and the landscape is destroyed. And we see landscape as culture. It's critical, in my opinion, in a wine region to associate culture with landscape.
I agree with all of that. I love that, and I wish everyone thought of it that way and handled it that way. When you left and started Conca del Rio Anoia, is anyone else there, or is it just you? Now we'll talk for a second about Corpanat and Classic Penedès, but is it just you that's in that?
So we are in the northern tip of the sparkling Penedès, to say it this way, which is the northern Penedès, and we are in the north oriental tip of this. No? So that's why we choose for Conca del Rio Anoia, Valley of the River Anoia, and promote to purchase the grapes, apart from what we farm in our historical farm, only from the area, to propose to the people in the world distinctiveness of the place.
Did leaving the Cava appellation, there was some good to it, and then it just kind of gets out of hand, and it's not what you wanted. Did leaving affect how people perceived like, well, he's not in Cava, we won't buy it anymore? I mean, was that a problem or something you endured and you're fine?
This is something that I owe to the brave American mentality and my years abroad to give us
Okay.
the perspective, because it has been anything but positive. People respect, people support. Of course, we lost a lot of contracts in Swedish monopoly or Canadian monopoly, state-controlled, that if you were sparkling wine from Spain, not called Cava, they wouldn't buy you anymore.
But that's a different circumstance. That's more of a corporate or country or state-run thing, right?
Exactly. No. And we sold in the beginning. Some, it was not everything. I mean, we lost sale, but the support towards the vision, I think that was very important. And this was since day zero. And this is what gives us a lot of strength. I think for my personal perspective, I don't make wine for my family and the team, which is important, of course, but it's for the territory, no?
Right.
And this is what really moves me to go wake up, go to work in the mornings, no?
Pepe, is it fair to say, because of that move, you were responsible for at least inspiring organizations like Corponat and Classic Penedès to come about? People that kind of left Cava to look in their own way for what they think is a better way to do it?
I think it's still early, and only time will say. And I don't want to be like arrogant to say if we inspire or not. It's true that maybe you inspired us, and my colleague in France inspired to see another vision. And it's true that we were the first ones. That was 2012. 2015, Classic Penedès is created with an idea to elevate the requisites for making sparkling wine in Catalonia, and I think they succeeded. And 3 years later, in 2018, Corponat is created, and with the idea to even elevate more the Classic Penedès standards, and of course the Cava, and I think they also succeeded. We didn't accept any of the invitations because we think they are not solid enough. Classic Penedès is like Cremant de Bourgogne, which is great, but it's not enough to rival our friends in Champagne. And Corponat is also a great initiative, but it's an association. So as I see it's still a marketing association. We really are inspired in the Burgundy model, in the Barolo model, where the protagonist is the territory, the people that farm the territory, its valleys, its villages, and its vineyards, or crus, if you want to call it. And we're still drawing the map and convincing the official government that this is the way. I think nowadays, Sam, we're living in a very interesting moment where this revolution is starting to get together the pieces of the puzzle, and we will see something interesting, more Burgundy inspired in the coming years.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that. Pepe, we know all sparkling wine starts with still wine, correct? You started a project in 2016, I think it was, focusing on still wines. I want to talk to you about Can Sumoi, Can, C-A-N, Sumoi, S-U-M-O-I. It is a still wine project of yours. Let's talk about it. It involves vine age, altitude, revival. Tell me about this project. And it sounds like, I don't know, a labor of love or something you always wanted to do, or.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, thank you for asking for that, because this is my baby, and where I'm putting like 90% of the effort every day now. No, of course, with the help of all of our team. No, listen, if you love wine and you have to start to make wine, please come to Penedès. This is the land. This is the land of opportunity. There are amazing old parcels, old vineyards of Xarel·lo or Sumoi, if you want to make white, or Xarel·lo if you want to make red Sumoi, which have an incredible potential, but that still hasn't achieved the higher podium in the world, because Cava has dragged Xarel·lo, and of course people that had planted Sumoi took it away. And planted Macabeus and Parelladas for the volume demand of the Cava. No? But really going into the mountain areas, you find these amazing parcels. And listen, this is what happened with me with Can Sumoi. I am passionate of bicycle riding. As I recall, like years living in New York, riding the bicycle up the Hudson River Valley with my friends.
I've done that.
And it's something that is really great, not only for the beauty of the Hudson, but also the escape of Manhattan that is needed. The people that the one that they live there every day, So anyhow, I was riding the bicycle on the mountains of Penedès and found this property, abandoned property, with these old vines, old farmhouses that was like screaming to a crazy guy like me, like say, hey, let's bring it back, Let's bring it back. And this is, I think, the way to start projects of wine nowadays in a world that is like overcrowded of winemaking and snobby winemaking things and architecture and fancy stuff. I think it's really go back to basics. Is take care of the territory, take care of that. In that case, that farm, recuperate that farm, and work with the farmers in the area to learn what the area can offer. In my opinion.
Wait,
Yes.
Pepe, is there much of that going on? Or are you one of the early, pioneers of, discovering these vineyards? Are there other winemakers, that are concentrating on Sumol, White Grenache, Girello, Grenache?
I think two things. There is a new generation on Penedès working a lot in the minimal intervention, recuperation concept, Sumol grape, Xarel·lo grape, that is making the region one of the most exciting, innovative regions going back to the past in the world. But also, when we talk about Futuro Viñador, I think this is something very, very much across Spain. There is a fantastic moment for Spanish viticulture where people are going back to the nature, recuperation, all that past that we have, because we're like in the essence of the old world, right? And I think it's like a very, very interesting, and we can talk about this when we talk about Futuro. But going back to Sumoy, let me share with you that Can Sumoy is at 600 meters altitude. That's at almost 2,000 feet. When the sun rises, you see Mallorca Island across the ocean. And this gives us an exchange of temperature day and night and a ventilation effect that is very healthy for this idea of making wines without minimal intervention. And last but not least, if we succeed, one day Sumoy will be at the top of the pyramid of the red grapes. It's kind of a Nebbiolo style, but with higher acidity and lower alcohol. But light color, a lot of tannins, and a lot of mineral earthiness expression with reduction, so that means that can age a lot. So get ready for the Spanish Nebbiolo, for the Catalan Nebbiolo in the years to come.
So I'm confused for a second. Sumol the grape, Sumoll, the double L in Spanish is always a little silent. Is Sumoy another word or a play on Sumol?
It's a play. It's the ancient way in Catalan to say the grape Sumoy.
Okay, I thought that because they're basically pronounced the same. All right, Pepe, I want to talk about Futuro Viñador. I have a thing called the wine list, which I want you to participate with me. I ask all my guests before they leave 5 questions about their wine preference. And then I just want to pick up the glass of Consommé and talk to you about it the way we did the Pedra. So you're involved in a very wonderful organization called Futuro Viñador, which you got into a little. Tell me more about that.
Well, this is a wonderful initiative. I would say pretty much inspired by our friend who is tasting for the Wine Advocate in Spain, and of course also has, I think, some region in France and Latin America, Luis Gutierrez. And he really shares this vision of a new way to understand wine, which is pretty much away from the old, how can we say, establishment, no?
Conventions and establishment.
Exactly. So this is really going back to the authenticity. And Luis is a very sensitive man, and he really, I think, cares for like old people, tradition, gastronomy, landscape, culture, social, etc. So basically, he planted the seed in a talk in Madrid. I think it's about 15 years ago now, and really like saying, hey, the potential is there. We just need to go back, and listen to the villages, no? And he created a book which is the New Vignerons. I don't know if you ever heard this. If not, I'll be happy to send you a copy, is a very interesting book about the new vignerons of Spain. And he makes a selection from Galicia to the Canary Islands to Catalonia, of course, Ribera, Rioja, etc., of this new idea of understanding winemaking in Spain, which is, again, is recuperating these lost traditions. No? And after this book, the association was created, and it's an association that comes all over the territory with values such as the ones we have been sharing during all the podcast.
Right, which is a great thing to have, advocacy and an organization. What's the best way for people to find out more info about Futuro Vinidor? Do they have a website or?
Yes, check the website. Although it's going to be changed, I think, in a month.
Okay.
But you can already Google that and learn about this. Futuro Viñador has just translated a very interesting pruning book. I am in contact with Pascaline Lepeltier because I would love to translate her amazing book here for our Spanish friends that are not able to read in English. Or French, and we create in Futuro. We create encounters where we share what we are learning. So, for example, if one is very good with soil understanding, we are going to do this year a soil understanding in sherry with Willy from Willy Perez from Bodegas Luis Perez and the project. In Jerez, we do, I don't know, like we did a horse traction seminar and here and 2 days work because we're very passionate on recuperating horse traction. When my father was little, all this property was done with 8 horses, and I am so passionate on recuperating this. See the vineyard work with horses and just have the support of an electric tractor.
Yep, that's a whole show on its own. Farming, with horses.
Well, let me tell you, it's not just about the CO2.
It's the way the hooves touch the ground too. That can't be replicated.
And it's the rhythm of the nature. It's all about the rhythm of the nature. There is nobody like a horse and a man that can take care of 100-year-old vines.
So I'm just curious. So there are similar organizations like Futuro Vinidor, around in other places, or this is pretty unique?
I think there are associations inside the appellations of people that share values and such, but transversal across Spain is the first one, and also that is not a commercial association, but it's a know-how association, social and cultural protection association and such.
It's great. Thank you for talking about that. All right, we have to wrap up pretty soon, but before we do, I subject my guests to a thing called the wine list. I've done this list with every guest on every show, almost 300 of them. Same 5 questions to everyone. I didn't tell you or Danny really about it because I wanted to be spontaneous. So I'm just going to throw these questions at you. Don't dwell on them. Just give me your best answers. So the first question is, what is Pepe Raventos drinking now? What's in your refrigerator? What are you enjoying? Did the seasons change? Does that change what you drink? Tell me what you're drinking now.
I am drinking a lot of 10 to 15-year-old Barolo.
Okay. Can never go wrong with that. You made a parallel to Barolo with the Sumol, so I'm sure that's a little research too, right? Do you have any particular makers that stand out to you, or you like them all?
Well, I like a lot Nebbiolo, but my favorite style for the moment, and of course it's always work because the Catalan people are very work oriented. But I love both work that Mascarelos are doing, both Maria Teresa and Mauro at Giuseppe and her daughter Elena. I enjoy both Conternos style, one more perfect and while the other one a little bit more on the classy. So that would be, for example, 4 of my.
You got favorite. Good taste, Pepe, on those two. All right, this is the silliest question of the 5, but do you have a favorite? Us wine people are also gastronomes, whether we realize it or not, because wine is so great with food. Tell me your favorite wine and food pairing.
Well, I am always very radical on pairings, but I am a very simple person, so I would say that the idea of a well-made, aged sparkling wine with roasted chicken is lovely.
That's a good one. I like that one. And I didn't mention, I post these, I do a post with the wine list on our social media. So we share this with everyone. All right. Here's the third question. Because wine people, like I said, are great gastronomes, and, we know wine like anyone else. And wine people travel a lot. Talk to me about some of your favorite wine restaurants and or bars. And when I ask you that, whoever you mention, if you leave anyone out, this isn't ranking. These are just things in your travels. Is there anything, around the winery, that just has great wine and food in your travels, and, we talked about you doing a lot. Are there any restaurants or wine bars that are still memorable or resonate, or you go back to? Are
Well,
there a few?
this is a very hard one because there are so many I love. But let me start local. If you come to Barcelona, please come to visit us in Penedès if you
Right.
love wine. And we are going to go or take you to Cal Xim restaurant, XIM. Maybe my favorite restaurant in the world.
Really?
Two
So
brothers.
the restaurant is called Xim, Xim.
Yes.
Okay.
Two brothers. One is grilling, the other one is doing the
I don't know if
service.
anyone has ever given us that.
And grandmother is cooking the classic dishes in the kitchen. So
It sounds
it's
awesome.
very local, but very, very pure. In Barcelona, I can say too many, but I will say one is Gresca, Bar Gresca, Gresca, Gresca.
Okay. That's what I'm
Very
looking for.
important for people that love food and wine.
Perfect. Do you spend time in New York? I don't know
Yes.
how long ago or how often you come in. And if you can't, don't answer this, but is there anything in New York, that rings to you like a Jim or a Goreska?
Wow, New York City. Are you kidding me? So many great things in New York City. Is that Vinegar Hill House still open?
Yes, it is still open.
Was
That's
something
nice that you pointed that out. Because everyone mentions Chambers where Pascaline is, which is terrific. Four Horsemen, which is terrific. But Vinegar Hill House. So you love that place.
I love that place. Of course, I love what Pascal Yilling is doing in Chambers and what Aldo Som is doing in his more classy style wine bar. And of course, Four Horsemen, and of course, Pasquale Jones for a great pizza with an amazing bottle of wine. But
you got all those right.
This was the beginning. And I will mention another hidden one I discovered in the heart of Harlem in my last trip called Clay.
With Gabrielle.
Yes, with beautiful Gabrielle, who did an amazing job. And that night we had the sanitary inspection, and I was giving this wine dinner, and it was so chaotic. Well, they did an amazing job. The food was so solid.
Thank you for sharing those. Those are all great. I'm excited about Jim, and I think I've heard Goreska before. Nice to mention Vinegar Hill. We don't hear that from our guests a lot. All right, fourth question. Here's the question. What is your favorite all-time wine? Now, before you answer that, when I structured that question many years ago, I was curious about what is the rarest, most expensive wine that Pepe drank? He knows wine people and he travels. I don't care about that answer anymore. Here's the question that I need you to answer. What is that wine or those few wines that changed the way you thought about wine, that influenced you, that either was a gateway or, it's just an important wine to you? Can you identify a wine or two, that in your life? Tell me about them.
Can I please mention 4?
Yeah.
So first is the childhood wine that I could see my father with his 11 brothers and sisters and my grandfather all drinking the sparkling wine from the region every Sunday before lunch and at the sun. That was something that was really changing the view. It was really, I think, influential. Second,
That Cava was in your blood, and it was around then. And as a kid,
champagne,
it was,
not cava,
yeah.
champagne with an X.
Okay.
Okay. Second one, childhood wine. My father in the late 80s bought a property in Côte de Castillon that was in the limit with Saint-Emilion. And he sent me there to learn French and a little bit about winemaking. I would go with a bicycle to the village to eat. I would be not even drinking a car. So my friends came to visit and we did a bicycle ride. We opened a bottle. We opened a bottle of 86 Chateau de Guy in the middle of the property. It didn't have even a label. It was taken from from the aging racks. And we grilled a buff steak that we bought at the local boucher in the village of Castillon-la-Bataille. We grilled that with the vines, of course. That wine was really something that I will never forget. In the rough, in the middle of the nature, with my friends, bicycles.
The environment and circumstances added to it as much as the wine.
Third, Silex Domaine Didier Daguenot. That we can talk about different vintages, but what is important is to really that wine, how Didier put that wine rivaling the best white Burgundies by not talking about Sauvignon Blanc, but really understanding the soil of the Silex parcel.
I think that's a great one, and he deserves all the recognition. What's your fourth?
Last but not least, Pierre Auvernois work in Pupillin.
Sure.
We can talk about his Savagnin's, but his Pulsar, like the wine, when I started to taste, we did a vertical tasting. We became friends with Manu and Anne through the years. So we go there, we exchange wines. I even went there to cook a Spanish paella, and we drank so much wine that the paella fell into the snow. It was a big disaster. I ended up cooking for the grandchildren at the kitchen. But anyhow, when he started to open the 86, 87, 88, without any intervention, say, listen, I started to like the wines that we did without intervention more than what I learned from my father. And tasting those wines 30 years later and see their aging capability, that was also a sign of change for me.
The Auvernois is so unbelievable. They're just incredibly difficult and expensive to get now, but
But he doesn't sell it expensive. There's the crazy.
No. It's the secondary market. He's fair about that. Great choices. Like I said, I'm going to post those. Last question, and you should be able to help me with this. The question is, and we'll change it a little if we have to. The question is, I want you to recommend to me the best wine around $15, $20, $22 American retail, a red and a white. You can go category white, Muscadet is a good wine. That's cheap. My kids are in their late 20s and 30s and they can't afford, $40, $50 bottles to bring to a dinner or as a gift. So how do you wow, at 15, 18, 20, 22 bucks? I'll go ahead and say that sparkling wines from the Cava region, and we've educated people about what's going on in the region, offers some good values. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, now, can you recommend, it doesn't have to be from Spain, it could only be from Spain. Tell me other red or white wines that you think are great value wines.
Normally, I enjoy regions in the very, very old world that are still not fancy.
Okay.
For example, Alicante.
Okay, good one.
Jumilla, for example. Taste the wines of my friend Keiko, Casa Castillo, the entry-level wines. Amazing monastrelles on the very delicate. Great value. How about the islands? Try the wines from 4 kilos in Mallorca. 4 kilos.
That's new.
In Mallorca.
Now, what's it called? Cuatro Quillas?
Yeah, 4 kilos. It's like
4 kilos.
What they harvest per plant. Very interesting.
So I think what you're hitting at, and other people have said it, is, and Alicante's been around, but it's still a great value compared to the region. Is new regions, new winemakers, people that care are creating quality wines that are not expensive and interesting. Agree?
Agreed.
Yep. All right. Did you have any others?
Well, just to throw ideas to open the mind, but give a chance to Morocco, like what Graillot is doing there. I think it's fantastic.
Really?
Give a chance to the south, not fancy areas of Italy. Greece, I think, is up and coming
Yes.
very strong on that category. Portugal,
Yes.
where there's a lot of know-how, a lot of history, great vineyards, great sites, but not the branding.
I agree with that. I think Greece and Portugal and Southern Italy are, incredible quality to value. All right. Those are great choices. I appreciate that. That may be one of the most thorough and lengthy wine lists. And the reason we do it is our listeners love to hear what the wine guys are thinking and drinking. So thank you for that. All right, Pepe, we're going to end the show. It's a segment called the Weekly Wine Sip. Every week we taste a different wine on air for the wine sip. I saved, even though we talked about it, I want to, do a little more of an evaluation. I want to talk about the Consumoy. In front of me, I have the Consumoy Garnacha Sumol 2022. In the middle, I don't know what this means. It says V Mediterranee pour established 1645. So that's the wine we're drinking. Tell me even a little more about this wine.
Well,
We didn't talk about the Garnacha. We talked about the Sumol.
Yeah, it's very simple. While because I am not very talented person, but I put as much effort as I can. We're learning from Sumol to really propose like a world-class red wine. But it's difficult. It's a very difficult grape, and that's why people abandon it. It has a lot of sensibility to botrytis if it's in a humid site. It has a lot of sensibility to pacification if it's in a hot site. So you really need to pick in the right moment. Tannins are big, so you don't want to pick underripe, etc. But when you do it right, I think the potential is incredible. I have some 18s, 19s in the cellar that we're going to release soon. But in the meantime, while we learn, in order to start to move that project and be able to invest in the vineyards and such, we blend it with one of the most delicious and easy to understand grapes of the world, which is the Garnacha, such a Spanish grape that is planted very much all over the country. And we find these two vineyards of Garnacha neighbor to the property of Consumoy. So we blend the Sumoy that is very racy and tannic and strong and like earthy, if you want, with a beautiful silky, aromatic and soft Garnacha to propose a wine that starts to introduce people to the Sumoy grape.
What in this particular vintage, because I know it varies, what type of blend of the two grapes?
We're talking about 50-50. So.
Oh, okay. Would you down the road like to do less Garnacha and highlight the Sumol, or that's not the goal?
This wine has been so successful, and I think it's important to, like you were asking me in the last question, to propose a wine that people can understand and enjoy. So this is a one that I think will belong to the project forever, while I work on single vineyard, 100% Sumol vinifications.
There you go.
Sadly will cost much more than this because of all the work that there is behind.
But typically they would. Those type of wines require more, attention and cost and all of that. All right, so let's do a quick evaluation. I'm holding the glass up, and the color is, pretty dark purple, not deep dark brooding, but pretty. You kind of can't see through it. There's a little, light on the edges. So I guess both grapes, are pretty hardy that way. Typically, when you mix Garnacha with Sumol, what do you get on the nose, Pepe?
Just a note on the color. Sumol is more on the light side, but when you blend it, it's like that Garnacha gets the protagonism. Something that doesn't happen when you put the wine on the mouth. In between, in the nose, I would say that the aromatics of all these dark fruits are what is appearing in the very beginning. No, certain dark fruit, maybe some raspberries protagonist, a little bit. right? A little bit of sensation though that moves away from that fruit characteristics and brings you to that limestone of the Montmell formation, a certain austerity that says, okay, this is not just an overwhelming fruity wine, that when you put the wine in the mouth, I think that's when the Sumol starts to gain the protagonism, more the acid.
I agree. And if you talk about mouthfeel, it's right in that right zone. It's not a thinner wine or a lighter wine. It's not unctuous. It has that perfect mouthfeel, that medium, not medium minus, not medium. It just sits there so nicely. Do you agree?
Absolutely, and this is the full, I think, the full vision of the wine.
Yeah,
It's something that enters easy, but then it stays and it stays and it stays.
I mean, let's talk about the palate. Does the palate replicate some of the nose descriptors? You get the raspberry on the palate. What else?
I think in my opinion, when you drink the Garnacha Sumoi from Cansumoy, especially this 2022 vintage, you are surprised also for the lightness of the wine. So yes, the fruit comes back. There's this acidity of the Sumoi. The wine stays there, but everything is in a very subtle way. And this is, I think, something that is very characteristic for all Cansumoy project. The wines of the Montmell Mountains are really known for their lightness.
Right.
Low alcohol.
So let's move to the food thing. This wine seems like a good food wine. What do you envision as, good pairings with this type of wine?
One of the things that you have to eat when you go to a Calcim is the pork cheeks grilled.
Okay.
It's very Catalan, historic food. Simple but delicious.
Rich and a little fatty.
Exactly.
And this cuts through it or complements it.
Normally they are seasoned with generous pepper and other rosemary and local herbs. So I think the wine goes wonderful with that, to put an example.
All right. In wrapping up the discussion of the 2022 Consommé, when you look at this 2022 Consommé,
yes,
and you said you have some other ones in the cellar that you're going to taste, and this is a relatively new project, you said.
Yes.
Are you at the point where there are things you need to continue to do, change, whether that's in the winemaking or in the farm or in the blend?
Well,
where do you think you're at, with this early baby?
Yes, we are at 10%.
Okay.
And there is everything to be done. That's why I said at the beginning that this is the baby and where we're putting all the attention. There's from very basic things like recuperating all dry walls, because everything is very steep. It's like terraces, very steep. So in terms of farming, like recuperating dry walls, of understanding muscle selection of the best plants of Sumol to regraft other old parelladas or American rootstock that we have planted already to start developing the plants. That from that to a winemaking perspective, to understand better what material is good for vinification, which I think it goes back to clay, it goes back to cement, where there is transpiration, because Sumol is very reductive grape. To understand also what is the aging in the bottle needed to blend this. And not to forget the local chestnut 500 to 2,000 liter old barrels where we do the finding.
You didn't mention that. We didn't talk much about winemaking, which, I'm fine with. We talked, a little about it, but interesting with the chestnut. All right, Pepe, we got to wrap up. I took a ton of your time and I appreciate you jumping on. Let me do a quick wrap up and I want to get some info from you. So if you have a question, suggestion, wine happening or event, hit me up at sam@thegrapenation.com. That's sam@thegrapenation.com. Subscribe to the Grape Nation podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your pods. We ask you to subscribe because when you subscribe, Pepe's interview shows right up as a subscriber. And there he is. If you like our podcast, leave a review. You can follow us on Instagram at @SBenRuby. You could follow us on X, Twitter, @BenRuby. I know those are two different addresses, but you can always find us with the hashtag #TheGrapeNation. We're on Facebook @The Grape Nation. As I mentioned, we'll post Pepe's wine list answers, and they're extensive. And I will post our weekly wine sip selections. I will give you the information on the Raventos y Blanc, Textores de Pedra, and the Consumai. So we'll put that on our media sites. Pepe, where can we find more information on Raventos y Blanc, Consumoy, in general, and where can we find more about, all of this on social media? So take it step by step.
Well, I think you can Google us. There's quite a lot of material there because my dear and much smarter than my wife runs all the branding, and she's doing an amazing job.
The website is very rich and detailed. So,
Thank you very
Raventos y
much.
Blanc, so that's, one place to go. Kudos to your wife.
The Instagram, I think, is very agile and dynamic. I am a disaster on that, but I think that Susana and the team do an amazing job. So it's
Okay.
at Raventos y Blanc and at Consumoy. And if you want to follow the personal projects I develop in the garage of innovation, at Pepe Raventos.
Okay. Pepe, I know you hate to talk about marketing, not one of your favorite things, correct?
Exactly.
But I compliment you because, obviously I've been a podcaster and I've been doing it for 7 years. You are a good podcast guest and you get yourself out there, from time to time, which I think is a good thing for the region, the story, and certainly, specifically your wines. So I thank you for that. That's your way of marketing, which is a good way, by the way. So I want to thank our guest, Pepe Raventos. Thank you to our engineer, Armin, and everyone at the Heritage Radio Network. I'm Sam Ben-Ruby, and you've been listening to The Grape Nation. The Grape Nation is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network. Food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.